All right. How are we? Everybody's dry? You're dry? Good. You guys can sit, stand, wherever you want. Stand away, man. It'll be a few minutes. I'm just going to go through a few things here. That as I was looking at this, I was really challenged, as we always are challenged, to look at the text and to not just keep doing the same thing over and over. And every year, myself and I try to push the rest of the teachers to dig further than what we learned last year. And Walt in the back here is like, hey, this year we shouldn't do Rosh Hashanah because we shouldn't actually celebrate Rosh Hashanah because it's not what it is. It's called Yom Teruah. And so I thought, all right, you're challenging me, so I got to dig into this myself. So I've been digging in the last few months, weeks really, and researching a lot of stuff. And as I was digging into this, I didn't want to go into a whole bunch of history and a whole bunch of things, but there was something that was glaring to me that made this celebration tonight different from years past when we have done it. And so I wanted to start with just a question of, that might be a weird question, but I've had this question in groups that I've asked before. And the question is, how many of you wake up every morning with just a good dose of poison? An honest one. All right. Yeah? I mean, you don't know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's kind of a crazy question. Like, who would think about starting their morning with poison, right? But most people do. And you raised your hand, but the question, hopefully, you'll be asking at the end of this is, do I? Because most people actually do. Because what most people don't realize is that a life of unforgiveness is like drinking poison every morning. Studies show that there are three things that actually hold us back in life: resentment, regrets, and rejections. Do any of us have those things in our life that we wake up with or we think about? Holding on to the memory of things like rejections and regrets is like poison to us. The poison that eats away at the joy and the fulfillment of our hearts, the joy and the fulfillment that we all deserve. They eat away and they break down the happiness that we should have in relationships, and they hold us back from having great relationships. It affects us at our jobs because we bring this poison and this unforgiveness to work with us. It actually, studies show, it affects your health. It can cause chronic stress, depression, even paranoia, as well as other things that work on heart disease as well. So one of the questions that I have is, what is forgiveness? Now, the definition of forgiveness is this. Forgiveness is the decision to let go of the desire for revenge and ill will toward the person who wronged you. It may also include feelings of goodwill toward the other person. Is there anybody in your life where you think, I could never think goodwill towards that person? I could never want the best for them. I could never let go of that thing, that wrong that person did to me. But this is the poison that we hold on to, and that eats away at our physical and spiritual bodies. On the other side of the coin, when we extend forgiveness, here's the health benefits. When we extend forgiveness, we have decreased levels of anger and hostility. I can relate to this because I know what it's like to regularly have worked through the process of asking, why do I have so much anger? Why am I so short-tempered? When we extend forgiveness, we have increased feelings of love, which is important in relationships, isn't it? When we extend forgiveness, it enhances our ability to trust people. How many of us struggle with the ability to trust people that we come in contact with, or even trust people who we're close with, but we can't seem to break through that trust barrier? Forgiveness frees us from the negative events of the past that we always hold on to and that are always weighing us down and always reminding us of that thought or that experience. And when we don't forgive, our subconscious, as I've talked about a lot, is always running and it's always affecting every decision that you make. Even if you don't realize it, that subconscious and that unforgiveness is choosing what decision you make. And you might not even realize why I'm making this choice, but you make that choice anyways. Sometimes we even act in anger not even realizing this because of that unforgiveness. And sometimes that unforgiveness isn't just that I need to forgive somebody else. Maybe sometimes that forgiveness is that you need to forgive yourself for the mistake you made, the regret that you have, the rejection that you caused. What mistakes have you made that you haven't let go of? What is it that you've done or said that continues to hold on to you, that continues to replay in your mind? There is a great quote from a guy named Lewis Smedes. He said, "To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you." So why is this important? Why am I bringing this up? Today marks the biblical holiday of Yom Teruah. In Leviticus, it says this. I want to read these two passages of why we're meeting here today. It says, this is Leviticus 23, verses 23 through 25. It says, "And the Lord, Jehovah, spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the people of Israel, saying, in the seventh month, on the first day of the month, you shall observe a day of solemn rest, a memorial proclaimed with blasts of trumpets, shofars, a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work, and you shall present a food offering to the Lord." And then again in Numbers 29, it says the same, but a little bit different, and I wanted to read this. See if you can pick up one thing that's added here. "On the first day of the seventh month, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall not do any ordinary work. It is a day for you to blow the trumpets, and you shall offer a burnt offering for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. 1 bull from the herd, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, a year old without blemish, also their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, with 1 male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you, besides the burnt offering of the new moon and its grain offering, and a regular burnt offering and its grain offering for a pleasing aroma to the Lord." What was different in that passage? Other than the specifics of the offerings, was there one thing that stood out?
They mentioned the offering.
It did? It got really specific in Numbers, though.
Yeah.
First one said remembrance, the second one didn't.
Okay? Yeah? There's another thing that stood out, and I'm going to get to it just a second here. Teruah, which is Yom Teruah in the Hebrew, is what we're celebrating today. It's to make a loud noise, or another word is the shofar. Do you guys remember what the shofar is? It's this loud horn that blows. It's this wake-up call to wake us up. It's a day of public prayer. It later became known as Rosh Hashanah, but as Walt pointed out, and he said, how can that be Rosh Hashanah? How can it be the first day of the year when it's on the first day of the 7th month? Isn't the first day of the first month the first day of the new year? This doesn't make any sense. So we talked about this for a while, and there was an article, if you want, that Walt passed on to me that was really, really good, and if you want to ask Walt, he'll send it to you. But Yom Teruah doesn't actually say what it is for. Did you see that in those 2 verses? It said, have a holy convocation, blow the shofar, offer these animals. But never once did it say why. Never once did it say, this is why you are celebrating this holy convocation, this festival. It just said to do it, which is odd, which sent me even further digging, like, why are we studying this? And as I continued to look through this, there was something that I noticed as I read through these 2 passages. The first day of Yom Teruah is celebrated with a new moon, it says. That wasn't in the Leviticus passage, but it was in the Numbers passage. And as I started to dig into this, every study and every commentary and every previous sage always talks about the new moon, so much so that Maimonides has pages of ideas and ways on how you calculate a new moon. Algebraic formulas, geometric formulas. He talked about the constellations and how you look at this. And like pages of the importance of you cannot celebrate this unless you see a full moon. Unless the moon was whole. It couldn't be a partial moon. It couldn't have a crack in it. It couldn't have anything. It had to be a whole moon. Which then made me ask the question, is this about us being whole? Is the celebration that starts the high holidays about us not coming to God partially, or partially broken, or partially empty, but coming to Him wholeheartedly and coming to Him as a whole person, not a broken person? Which then led me to a passage that I've always found perplexing. I didn't understand why Yeshua would say what He says here. And this is in Luke, where this is the passages that talk about the Beatitudes, right? But in Luke's version, it's a little bit different than in Matthew's version. And in Luke's version, it says, "Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven." And I've never really understood that last part. What does it mean to forgive, and you will be forgiven? As I looked deeper into this, I continued to study on the psychological and the mind side as well. And what I learned was that most of us don't understand or realize that our beliefs are a series of connections in the brain that represent the memory or an experience that we had and the meaning that we gave that experience. As long as that original meaning stays intact with the original past experience, your reality today will repeat itself as your brain continues to use your past experiences to interpret the present moment. My sophomore year in high school, I was playing baseball. And we played baseball at Thunderbird High School. I'll never forget it. It was a rival of ours. It was actually where her sister went to school. And I went there my sophomore year, and I had the game of my life. I had 5 at-bats, and I went 4 for 5, and I almost hit the cycle. I had 2 doubles, a triple, and a double, my last at-bat. And my 5th at-bat, when I came up, I actually struck out looking. You know what it's like to strike out looking? You guys know what that means, right? You don't swing, right? You take the 3rd strike, and it goes by you, and the umpire says, strike 3, you're out, right? I went back to the bench. You know, that was like the 7th inning, so the game was over at that point. You know, it was a great game. I played defensively fantastic, and my dad showed up at the very end of the game, and he said, "Hey, don't take the bus, he'll take me home." And the whole way home, the only thing that my dad saw was that last at-bat. And that whole ride home, my dad told me over and over and over what I did wrong and how I should have done it better and why that's so bad for the team and why I can't do that and blah, 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 blah. And that was the moment I can remember in my life where it was solidified that I will never be good enough in His eyes. And every conversation that I had with my father from that point forward was about me seeing Him as the person who always sees me as not good enough. Because that experience that I had with Him, I gave it a name and I defined it. And because I defined it, I defined Him. And so my whole relationship from that point forward was one of division and hatred and anger. And I couldn't talk to my dad for about 20 years without anger. Because that was the experience and the label that I gave it. What I didn't realize later was that my dad was just trying to make me better. He wasn't trying to tear me down. He was trying to find a way to help me become better at what I was doing. But how I interpreted it was the reverse. And it separated us. How many of us want to be free? How many of us want to find joy? How many of us want to find fulfillment? Maybe it's time to forgive. Maybe what's holding us back from the celebration of life is that we are not yet whole. Maybe instead of drinking poison every single day and every single morning, it's time that we forgive that person, forgive that experience, or forgive those people. Each year, we celebrate Yom Teruah here with an added thing that's not biblical. It's just a long, age-old tradition called Tashlik. And Tashlik is where we get from the passage of Micah, where Micah talks about how God asks us to throw the sins in the deepest waters, and the waters are so deep that they'll be forgotten. We won't even know that we had those sins, we had those regrets, we had those resentments. They'll be gone. And each year we celebrate this idea with the challah bread, where we take a piece of challah and we label it, we name it. What is it? And this year, for me, it's forgiveness. What is it that you need to forgive? Who? Name that piece of challah. And this year we're going to take it and we're going to throw it into the 40 arpent, and it'll be gone. It'll be this idea like, I am giving this to you, God. I am naming this, and I'm asking, and I want to, from this point forward, work towards forgiving whatever this is. There was another great quote that I heard. It says, if you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things change. It wasn't until I was able to forgive my father that I was actually able to have a real conversation with him. It wasn't until I forgave my father that I could actually start to have a relationship with him again. It took me forgiving him to find joy.